Good morning. Thank you for being here with me today, and thank you for waiting. I'm just a few minutes behind. I'm running a little slow, so I appreciate your patience and sticking on here today. I have an exciting session to go through today. We're going to talk through how you can do something that we've been getting asked for years to do, and that's how you can make offers on listed properties. So representing one of the cash buyers from Zoodealio and bringing that cash offer to a property that's already listed on the MLS. So we're gonna walk through that. I'm really excited to go through this framework today. Let me go ahead and open up the chat. I know that you may have questions. I will be checking this periodically throughout today's call. So let me open it up and make sure that we can all chat amongst ourselves. Okay, cool. Chat is now open, and I would love to know, where are you tuning in from today? It's always so fun to see you all from across the US. And I know that all real estate is hyper local, but there are some trends that are emerging, and I'm curious if you're seeing these trends hold true for your market. I'm going to share it in just a moment. Dusty, hi, glad to have you. Glad to have you from New Braunfels, Texas. We've got Ochika from Las Vegas. We've got Zoran from Fort Worth, Texas. So couple Texas. We've got California. Sylvia representing from Los Angeles. Glad to have you. Connecticut, what is up? Charles, glad to have you on today from Greenwich. So all across the US, you guys are tuning in from, which is really cool. We got another California pop-up from Marin County, the Bay Area. Hi, Lynette. Glad to have you today. So it seems like the real estate market is just kind of in this interesting time frame. Wondering if you're seeing this in your market. Let me share my screen. I've got a couple slides for us today that I want to go through. And particularly, if you are in Seller Source, this is also going to be of extra interest for you, because what is happening is we have homeowners from across the US that are requesting cash offers, and at times they already have their home listed on the market. And so they're looking for other solutions, and they're coming to Zoodealio and they're saying, bring us cash offers. And as you know, with Zoodealio, we require an agent. And so that is you. If you're working with us through Seller Source, you may get opportunities where that home is listed. And so we thought it would be a great idea to do a session today on how to make offers for properties that are already on the MLS. So we've got, you should be able to see my screen now. If you don't, ping me, but you should be able to see that. There's hi, good morning from fabulous Las Vegas. So glad to have you. You know, I am tuning in from Gilbert, Arizona. It's a suburb of Phoenix. If you're not familiar with the Phoenix metro, lots of little cities kind of combined into that metro area. We are headquartered in Gilbert, Arizona. Typically, this time of year, it's like 115, 116. Typically, it is really hot. But yesterday and today, it is in the mid 90s. So this is an absolute treat. I'm just shocked I'm even here and I didn't just bail out on the day and hang out outside, because it is so beautiful outside. So I am very, very thankful for this weather, and thankful to be spending some time here with you, going through exactly best tips, practices for bringing an offer to a listed home. So today's session is going to focus on that. We're also going to unpack the Cash Plus so that we have a really good understanding of how that works. That way, when you're out there talking with listing agents, you can really explain that very well. And, you know, bring some clarity around different ways to move the market, because what we're seeing is that in many markets, it's a little flat. Things are a little slow, and that's just not sentiment, that is data. I'm gonna share that with you in just a moment. But first, wanted to share the top 10 cash offer markets for last week. We had Denver, Colorado hitting at the top at number 1, which has been really interesting because Las Vegas has consistently been 1 or 2. So Las Vegas is number 2. So I know we have Kenia on from Las Vegas today. So your market is topping out number 1 for cash offer requests, 1 or 2. It has been pretty consistently throughout the year. And then, you know, we see a lot of Florida. We got good old Phoenix in there. Atlanta is in that top 10, and rounding out the top 10 is Los Angeles. So typically we see a lot of demand coming in, and when we do see that demand coming in from a market, we know that, you know, that market may be in a bit of fluctuation. It may be a little bit slow. And then also some indicator of, you know, how the market is tracking is purchase applications. And we had some strong purchase application activity towards the end of June, beginning of July, and then that has somewhat waned. And so purchase applications are down a little bit. They fell 10% on the week ending 7/11. So last week's data is not released yet. It'll be interesting to see what that tracked and trended. We know that the Fed is stubbornly sticking to their position on monetary policy. They're not cutting those rates yet. There is a very small chance that they will cut next week when they meet. Hopefully we get some relief at the next meeting, but it looks like where we're at with interest rates is staying and holding true. And so what does that do for, sellers? And what we do know is that delistings, so sellers are pulling their home off the market. They rose 47%, which is an increase. And so we do know that many sellers are getting frustrated with the lack of activity and pulling their homes off the market, which, hey, if you don't need to sell right now, if your market is one of those markets that's moving a little slower and you don't need to sell, you probably shouldn't. It's probably a good idea to pull that home off the market. But one of the sayings that I hear a lot here at Zoodealio internally is the pendulum swings both ways. And if you've been in real estate for a minute or two, you've seen the cycles. And what we know is that this too shall pass and things will swing the other way. But the beauty is we have a unique opportunity right now. And the opportunity is to make stuff happen. You can substitute another word in there if you would like, but I am all about making things happen because here, when this market is the way it is, you have a powerful tool that can unlock opportunity. And so we're going to go through that today. And I want to tool you up with how you can bring cash offers to a home that's listed on the market, really explain that to the listing agent. And we're going to skim through that framework. And so the first thing that you're going to want to do before you bring that offer is you want to call the listing agent and confirm availability. So you're going to see as I work through the steps to taking this offer to the listing agent, you're going to see that communication is prevalent and it is key. And the reason why is because I want you to think back to when you were first exposed to Zoodealio, you were first exposed to the different cash offers. There is a learning curve, and likely you showed up, maybe you played around in your platform, maybe you attended one of Jeremy's offer trainings that we do every day. By the way, if you're not familiar with that, we do an offers training exclusively on offers every single day. So you can catch that. It's at 11 a.m. Arizona time. But you took some time, you invested in learning about these different offers and options, and you learned about it. And so the reason why communication is going to be a huge component of this is because if you just send the agent the offer, if you just shoot them over an email with that offer dashboard link, it will likely fall on deaf ears. They likely won't even open it. And if they do, they might click around and they might go, this isn't even real. And they just will dismiss it. And so communication is going to be your secret weapon here because you have to establish rapport. You have to let the listing agent know that this is a legitimate bona fide offer and that if the seller chooses to exercise that and accept that offer, this is actually an offer they can close in as little as 21 days and sell that home. And so if you have a home that's sitting on the market and you want to bring an offer to that listing agent, this is the first step. First thing I would do is call the listing agent. When you call the listing agent, you're trying to confirm availability, and then you also want to tee up the offer that's coming. You want to give them an understanding of what they're about to see in their email inbox so that when they get it, they have a basis to refer back to. And so I have on screen a script that you could use. Clearly, you can make this your own, but we thought this was a really good starting point. Now, let me share with you. Some agents are like, oh, well, this is a good strategy for homes that have been on the market for 90 days, 120 days, longer. I will just share with you that you don't even know what this opportunity could be for. And there's a saying that's never shop with someone else's wallet. And what I mean by that is if you're going shopping and you're using your own money and you're using your own funds, you can make those decisions. But when it is not your money, when it is not your wallet, you have no idea what that home seller would be willing to do. And so you could have properties that haven't been on the market for 60, 90, 120 days that would consider a cash offer through the Zoodealio platform, and you just don't know it. And so I guess what I'm saying is be open-minded for who this could work for. On the other hand, you also have to look at your resources and your time and see what would really work for you in your workflows and being able to do this. And so what I can say is that the agents that we have seen, and this is, just across markets, it's not market specific, it mainly is agent specific. And the agents that we have seen have success with making offers on properties that are listed on the market, they have a few common denominators, if you will. And one of them is they are willing to communicate. Now, either it is them. I will say that they also may have a team or a virtual assistant that does a lot of this legwork for them, but they have the ability to communicate with the listing agents and they are able to do so. So that's number one. Number two is they're able to work this into their workflows. And so whatever system they're using to prospect, perhaps this becomes another system into their workflow. And number three, they do it consistently. consistently, because it's not going to be, you do this 5 times and you get an offer accepted. You're going to have to run this at scale. You're going to have to run this consistently to see, some good results come from it. So the success isn't so much like, an agent in Philadelphia is having great success because of that market. It's not so much the market, it is the agent. And it's if the agent can communicate, if the agent can work it in and have it be a pillar of their lead generating, and then if the agent can do that consistently over time. So if those are you, this could work really well, and it could be another opportunity for you. And what's also interesting is we've gotten feedback from agents that are bringing offers on MLS, and they're now being known in their market as an agent that has access to different cash offers and options. And so it's kind of positioning them in another category, if you will, which is always wonderful, because if you're like me, when you're out there and you're working, you constantly want to separate yourself from that sea of sameness and have a unique value proposition. And so this is just another one that you get to have and you get to bring to your marketplace. So first step, you want to make sure that property is available. You want to make sure that you tee up that an offer is coming. This scripting, it's just really simple. Once they confirm that the property is available, you just let them know, great, I wanted to give you a quick heads up before I send something your way. I work with a group of cash buyers and we have a unique offer we're putting together for your listing. It'll come to you in the form of a dashboard link, not a traditional contract. So your seller can review the terms first before committing to anything. And if the numbers work, awesome. Your seller can move forward with ease. If not, sometimes these offers spark a conversation around price or motivation. Either way, I hope it brings value to you and your client. So a few things there. And if you've been on some of our offers trainings, you know that one of the benefits of having the cash offers is that you can use it as a hedge against the open market. And so in other words, if you're the listing agent and you're sitting down with the seller, you're at the kitchen table, you're going over, pricing strategy, maybe list on MLS, let's review these cash offers. Well, one of the things that you're able to do that is very powerful is you're able to use the cash offer as a hedge against that open market. So if you do take that listing on the open market and the home doesn't sell in that time frame that the seller is hoping it would sell in, well, then the seller can always revisit those different cash offer options. And so it's a really powerful tool for you as a listing agent. But then in this, in this context, it's also a very powerful tool that you're bringing to that listing agent, because here you're going to help them uncover that seller's true motivation, that seller's true price. And I don't know about you, if you've ever taken a listing and the seller says one thing, but then as soon as you get an offer that comes through, their tune quickly changes. And it's like, wait, what? You just told me ABC 3 weeks ago and now your tune has completely changed. And so what we know is that oftentimes when presented with a bona fide offer, that seller's motivation will be uncovered in a way that it hasn't been exposed yet. And so a really neat tool. And so if the number works for the seller, great, they can exercise it, they can move forward. If it doesn't, then at that point, hopefully the listing agent is going to get some additional benefit from this interaction with you and see you as a positive source in their business and helping them move their inventory too. So first, make sure that the home is available, okay? And then the second thing that you're gonna do is you're gonna go into your Zoodealio platform and you're going to use the Get Cash Offers button to submit the property. Now, when you submit this property, you just key in the address and let it autofill what it has. It may ask you, like sewer septic at times, it needs to confirm which one. And then I want to encourage you in the additional notes when you're utilizing this Get Cash Offers button, put in there that this is a listed property. This property is on the MLS, it's listed. And then also note for our underwriters that the photos online are current. Because what's going to happen is you're going to submit the property, and then the very next thing you're going to do is you're going to go in and you're going to get those final numbers. And so you're going to go into the offer dashboard or into the offers tab from that client list, and you are going to click the Get Final Numbers. I would recommend that you do that for the Cash Plus and the Cash Plus with repairs if you believe that the property could use some visual enhancement before being relisted. Okay, so you're going to request those final numbers on both of those. And when you put in the notes that the photos online are current, then the underwriter will understand that this is a listed property, that the photos that are being represented online are current, and so they can use those to make a determination on condition. Now, one of the cool things about this strategy is that the number that's returned, it's actually going to give the agent another added benefit. It's going to kind of flush out their pricing and if they're priced in line with market value. And so the beauty is that then now only, now that they can uncover that seller's motivation, but now they also have a good understanding of what buyers think that property is worth. And there are just a lot of benefits to this. So once you click the get final numbers button, it will take 1 to 3 business days before that final offer is returned. I would encourage you, at day 2, you can always go in and you can chat with us via the chat button on your platform, or you can email offers@zoodealio.com, or you can give us a call and follow up on that. So if it's taking more than, I'd say, 36 hours, I would follow up on that. And I'm talking Monday through Friday. So if you did this sequence on a Friday afternoon, then I would wait till Tuesday morning, give that full business day. But you can definitely follow up on these. We welcome that follow-up. Things do slip through the cracks. The volume is pretty incredible right now that the underwriters are managing, but they're doing a really great job. And so if you do need something to be checked up on, or let's say you need something to be expedited, on the other hand, you can always follow up on that as well and ask that they expedite that number. I'm going to take a quick break because I do see a couple questions coming through in the chat and in the Q&A. So let me take a quick look at these before we move on. Okay. What would be an example of working the offer into your workflow? Great. So this question is from Jim. Jim, great question. So what I mean is let's say that, you have these 3 different lead pillars that you do. Maybe you call your database, maybe you call expired listings, and then I would suggest working this in as one of your workflows. So working on market properties. And so then you would take your calendar and you would time block, maybe from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day to work on market properties, and then create that time blocking so that you can do this every day. So you have consistency throughout your week of working the properties that are on MLS. And as I mentioned before, we do have some of the agents that we're seeing have success with this. We know that they have teams, maybe they have a virtual assistant, and so that virtual assistant is able to execute a lot of this workflow for them. Okay, so where is the script available? There is not a script available in School, but we can definitely get this added into School for you so that you can use this. Sounds like you're part of Seller Source, so that you can use this when you are working those properties that are on MLS. I mean, it's absolutely incredible to us to see the volume of homeowners that are requesting these cash offers that are already listed. Because what is that telling us? It's telling us that they're not satisfied with what's happening with their home that's been listed on the market. And so if you're in that scenario, you're taking the offer to the listing agent, and the conversation is a little bit different. The conversation is your seller has specifically requested these cash offers. And so that's a completely different conversation. And so, you kind of have 2 different silos happening here. You have one of the silos being, you're an agent, maybe you're not part of Seller Source, or maybe you are part of Seller Source and you're wanting to just enhance your business, and you're gonna make offers on market properties. That's one thing. But then we have a whole other silo that's happening here, and that silo is that homeowner has specifically requested those cash offers from Zoodealio. And so then you, representing the buyer, are then taking those offers to that listing agent. And the conversation is a little bit different. You're going to have to tweak it just ever so slightly when you know that homeowner has specifically requested those cash offers. And again, it's so telling. And, and I put myself in the listing agent's shoes, and I would probably be a little annoyed, right, at my seller for going out and submitting their home on different websites, but it's happening. And I think that it speaks to the market. It speaks also to the dissatisfaction of that homeowner that's trying to sell and can't. And so they're frustrated, and so they're looking for other options. And this could be a great one. And so I love it. You're going to have to navigate those conversations and take those little twists and turns along the way to make it make sense. This is just a framework that I believe will help you get there. Okay, so you're going to request the offers to be finalized. And then once you have the offers finalized, you are going to email those to the listing agent. Here is a sample email that you can use to send those offers over. I am suggesting that you use the dashboard link. And so you're going to go into Zoodealio, you're going to grab that dashboard link. In fact, I've got Zoodealio open. So let me just show everyone where that's at, just in case that you're not already familiar. We're going to go to our client list. There, let's see. So if you go into the property and you open that up, you will see in the upper right, there is a share button for that cash offer dashboard, and you're just going to click that and copy the link. So very simple. Copy that link and then paste that link into your email. So let's go back over to the example email. Okay, so the example email, it just has an opportunity for you to insert that link in there so that you're just basically saying like, hey, I work with a buyer who's interested in this property, rather than sending that traditional offer first, because that is the biggest difference, right? Like most of the time when we get an offer, it comes and it's written, it's typically on our state form, and that is the traditional path. So this is a little non-traditional, and we get it. And this is why communication is going to be so important if you want to have success in doing this, is because you're going to have to let them know that it's a little bit different. And here's why it's a little bit different. So anyway, we're going to kind of let them know, here's that dashboard, here's those offers. A few points to clarify. This is just an offer summary. If the seller is interested, they can click accept so that we can move forward. And at that point, the addendum will be generated. And then basically just letting them know this is a platform for agents to streamline this offer process. And so this is just a good recap of, what they're getting when they get these offers. Now, here is the other thing. You're going to email them. I mentioned at the very beginning, there's a lot of communication involved. This does require communication to be successful. If you just send this email with the offer link, I'm telling you, we've seen it play out. We've worked with agents. We beta tested this a few years ago with several agents from across the US. So this is not market specific. This is just in general. The agents that didn't communicate, that didn't, pick up the phone and actually have those conversations, their conversion was terrible. So terrible. So don't even do it if you're not going to call, because it's not even worth your time. But if you're willing to put in that extra effort and make those calls, you could see some major change happen in your business by working these on-market properties. I mean, these sellers want to sell, right? That's why they're on the market. And again, don't ever shop with someone else's money. Don't ever shop with someone else's wallet. You don't know what they're willing to do or what they want to do or what their life circumstances are. And the other thing is you might get a no at first, but you could get a revisit. And that revisit could unlock that opportunity. The buyer could end up purchasing that home. And then, of course, in this scenario, you would then bring that home back on market and relist that property on behalf of the buyer. Okay, so you're going to send that email. And then the next thing that you're going to do, you're going to call. You're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call that listing agent and you're going to confirm, hey, I just sent over an offer for you for your property on 123 East Main Street. Did you get it? What questions do you have for me? That sort of call. So it's that follow-up call. And through this sequence, you're really going to position yourself as the leader in this space. They're going to understand that you really know what you're doing. They're going to understand that you have different offers and options to bring to the table. And at that point, they're likely going to have some questions for you around the offer. And so I thought it would also be a wonderful time for us to do a quick review of the process on a cash plus with repairs. So the reason why I chose the cash plus with repairs is because it's very similar to the cash plus. We just, if there's a repair component or not, we can just sub out the components that have to do with repairs. So let's skim through it really quick because this is going to be important. You're going to send these offers. Inevitably, that agent, that home seller, they're going to have some questions. And so you're going to have to be the expert that answers those questions. I do have a resource for you. Let me pull this up. We have a PDF explainer of the offer, and this can be very helpful for you, for the agent. And so if you need this as a good reference point, I want you to have it. So let me get that handy. Okay. And so this document, great kind of delineation of the process of the Cash Plus program, kind of gives you the step-by-step in black and white. And so we always like to refer back to this. It is a resource available to you in your dashboard. And if you're watching this on a replay or on YouTube and you want access to these documents, just send an email to support@zoodealio.com and we're happy to get them to you. But this is a good resource and this gives you the black and white of, exactly how it works, as well as at the very bottom, there is an example. So great resource. In addition, I want to skim through it and I want to just show us how it works from start to finish. So there are 2 transactions with a Cash Plus offer. And in this scenario, we're going to insert the repair component because a lot of the Cash Plus deals do have some sort of repair component. Maybe it's little carpet and paint, maybe it's a bigger repair component. It just depends on the property and what makes sense. So first thing is that offer is returned. Second thing is you finalize that number. And we went through those sequences. And so when you're working with on-market properties, you're going to do step 1 and step 2. So you're going to request the offer, you're going to finalize those numbers, you're going to get that final offer back. Now, when you present that final number to that seller, if the numbers work for them, they can accept that offer. They accept the offer, the buyer will generate a sales addendum that will accompany your state form. All of that will get signed, and then escrow will open much like a traditional process. Okay, so once escrow is opened, the buyer will go in and do a home inspection of the property. Now, typically they're just doing a home inspection. Every once in a while, there might be an add-on depending on the market, depending on if something additional is necessary. Now, the beauty is the buyer is going to analyze that property in totality, and they're going to bring back the inspection findings, as well as if they believe that strategic repairs are necessary to enhance the resale value of that property, they're also going to do a repair proposal. Keep in mind, the seller gets to drive the bus. So the seller is looking at all of this, and the seller is making the decision on whether or not they want to proceed with any sort of repair. And so if the seller doesn't want to repair the property, they don't have to. If they do want to repair the property, they get to decide the scope in which it will be done. So they get to have the final say on how that works. As I mentioned, they pick the strategy. So seller chooses how they want to proceed. And then once that inspection period is wrapped up, then we proceed to closing and the buyer purchases the property. That is the first closing. So buyer is going to purchase it. They will take over all of the home ownership, interim costs, maintenance, all of that. And the seller moves out, gets their first payout. So that is the first portion. Now think through though, when the property is on market, so it's listed on the market, the listing agent will close it out on MLS. You will be the buyer's agent. You will be representing the buyer. And so in that scenario, it's going to close on MLS, and then the first closing is going, or the second closing will ensue, and here's what that will look like. So here's what will happen. Buyer purchases that property, seller moves out. That MLS transaction is closed out in MLS, okay? And you're probably wondering, like, what do I get paid and all of that? And I'm gonna get to that in a minute, so just bear with me, hang tight. So if there was a repair strategy chosen by the seller, then the buyer will go in and complete the repairs. And then the repairs will get completed. You will verify that those are completed for the buyer, sign off on those. And then at that point, there is a resale meeting with the buyer. And the buyer is going to go through the resale process with you, make sure that everyone is on the same page. And then you will relist that property on the market. Now, during that relisting period, I do like to share that the buyer requires you as the agent to complete a form every 2 weeks. This form is going to let the buyer know how many showings they have had. It's going to let them know what sort of feedback you've had. So really easy. If you work with like a showing time, it's super simple for you to export that information and just, you know, plop it in there. Very, very easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of time at all. And also let them know what you've done to market the property, right? So property is going to be marketed. It's going to be online. The resale marketing agreement does set forth strategic price reductions. It's really neat because they're controlled, they're consistent, it's strategic. And so this is an approach that is actually going to be far superior to what we typically see happen. And that is, you know, nothing, nothing, nothing. And then just one big old price reduction when maybe that big old price reduction wouldn't have really been necessary. Maybe a little smaller incremental ones along the way would have been more effective. And that is typically what we've seen with the resale marketing agreement and how those price reductions play out. At some point during the relisting process, you're going to get that contract, you're going to get it accepted. And then at that point, the normal, you know, typical escrow process will follow in your market. And then the property will resell. This is the second closing. And at that second closing, that is when the seller's reserve is released back to them in accordance with what the property sold for. So we're going to skim that out in just a moment as well. But this is just an at a glance of the first closing and the second closing. And the difference here is that first closing, this is an on-market property. And so there would have been an agent that had it listed on MLS. And at that point, you would have been the buyer's agent. So that's really the only difference here. Pretty much it's going to flow like a typical transaction, except the difference was this home was already on the market when you first got it. So I want to skin out the cash plus with repairs, the explainer on how the offer works, what those fees are, and all of that, just to give us a refresher. Because when you present this offer to the listing agent, they're going to have questions. And I want to make sure that you're tooled up to answer them. So let's skim through that real quick. So first of all, the cash plus with repairs previously was referred to as the fix it and list it. And so I like to kind of notate that because there's been some terminology change. But the cash plus offer and the cash plus with repairs are essentially the same offer. One has a repair component, one doesn't, okay? And so here's how it works, right? First, that offer is returned. Now, when the offer is returned, that is what the buyer believes is the market value of that property. And the reserve is a portion of the seller's equity that is set aside until that second closing. And so think of it like a hedge. And essentially, that is exactly what it is, because the buyer is making an offer that is based on a fee. The buyer is not making any margin on this offering. The buyer is only making a fixed fee. And so any margin on the sale is the seller's, and they accomplish that through the reserve. The fees are very transparent. They will be disclosed to that agent up front. There will be a program fee, there will be a resale fee, which includes the agent commissions and resale closing costs. And then if there are any repair costs associated with it, those will also be determined on that first sale. Okay, so how the market value works. First thing I like to mention is if the numbers come back and you disagree with them, you need to let us know. If the offer amount is way too high or if it's way too low, in either circumstance, it doesn't do anyone any favors. Communicate with us if you believe the offer that was returned is not at market value. This becomes critically important because, as I mentioned, if it's too high, if the offer is too high, then what's going to happen is when you go to relist that property, it's not going to sell for that too high amount. And so what that's going to do is just eat into the seller's reserve. And then ultimately, when the property does sell, they may not be happy because they won't get as much of their reserve returned. If the offer is too low, then what likely would happen is the seller won't get enough on the first payout in order for this offer structure to make sense. And so it really needs to be a collaborative effort to ensure that that offer is returned at market value. All right, the reserve. As I mentioned, it is a portion of the seller's equity. It is set aside to the second closing, and it is dispersed based on what the home resells for. Again, this is why it's so important we get that initial number right, because when that initial number is right, then the reserve return is greater. And so think of it as a security instrument, think of it as a hedge. It really just sits in that property because the basis in which the buyer purchases the property for becomes less. And so it's not like anyone's holding this money, it just sits inside of that property. And the contractual agreement between the buyer and seller ensures that when the buyer resells the property, that reserve is dispersed back to them in accordance with whatever that resale price is. Now, typically the reserve is anywhere from, actually it says 15 here. Typically we're seeing 17 is being kind of like the baseline, and then it goes up from there, depending on the market, depending on the absorption rate, depending on the risk that the property presents to the marketplace, depending on a lot of different factors, right? Like we have some properties that the buyers are purchasing that have HOAs that are just, really expensive. So there are a ton of different factors that go into what that reserve will be, but it is returned to you, so you will know what that number is. And then the program fees, the program fee starts at 6%. You could see this go up depending on, again, the market, the risk the property presents to the marketplace, the movement in that market, a lot of different things. And then there's also the agent commissions and resale closing costs, which is the resale fee, and that is 5.5%. This is how you get paid. I will skin out those numbers here in just a moment, but there's something that I like to point out, and that is with the program fee. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that this offer is not a margin-based offer. So the buyer is purchasing this property. They are only making a fixed fee. They don't make margin on the sale. And so if you're considering a cash offer on your home, this is one of the reasons why I believe the Cash Plus offer is the best offering available, because it is not a margin-based offer. The seller is going to know exactly what they're paying for certainty and convenience, and that is the program fee. In addition, this program fee also covers a lot of the interim ownership costs. And so think about when the buyer purchases the property, the seller, if they had a mortgage, they will no longer have that mortgage payment. They will no longer have to carry the interim, holding costs. So electricity, utilities, HOA, insurance, interim lawn maintenance, interim pool maintenance, property taxes. And so there's a lot of benefit in those costs being just gone. And so it kind of offsets this program fee. If you really think about it and you run the numbers, you're going to see that this fee isn't all profit to the buyer, right? And so this is great to let the listing agent know that, hey, when the buyer purchases the property, all ownership costs for that homeowner stop. The seller no longer has a mortgage. The seller no longer has to carry utilities. The seller no longer has to carry the insurance. The seller no longer has to maintain the interim maintenance of the property. The buyer is now going to be responsible and cover all of that. So pretty important. And typically, in a 3 to 6 month resale time frame, this could add up, right? This could end up being a couple percent of that 6%. And so when you think of it from that lens, you really see how this structure is quite amazing for that seller, especially if they need that liquidity, if they want to move on to their next place, and all of that. So pretty cool stuff. Now, the agent commissions and resale closing costs, this is going to cover your commission when the buyer purchases the property, and it's also going to cover your commission for relisting the property, all right? And so what does that look like? Well, you will be paid 2% when the buyer purchases the property from the seller, and then you will be paid 2% on the second sale. So it works out to a 4% commission. Now, when the property is listed on the market, you're probably, maybe you're going to negotiate on this, but what I will say is when you're working the cash plus structure in your own business, we do see agents negotiate on this, right? Commission's completely negotiable. You can negotiate on this. You can say that you want to make more. You can say that you're willing to accept less. Totally negotiable. You get to drive that bus on what you want to do. If it's astronomical, though, I'll just let you know that if it is excessive, like we've had communications from the buyer where there have been some agents that have, charged a huge fee, and the buyer's like, wait, we don't know about this. So anyway, if it's astronomical, you might get a phone call. But in general, commissions are negotiable always, and so you can negotiate these fees. What is set forth in the numbers is a 5.5% resale fee, and that 5.5% resale fee does cover 2% on that first sale and 2% on the back end listing sale. All right, now if repairs are a component of this sale, as I mentioned before, during the inspection period, the buyer will propose repairs. They'll work with you to see what strategic repairs you believe are necessary, and ultimately come to that conclusion of what they believe. And then the seller has to greenlight this, right? So the seller gets to approve these repairs. Something that I like to mention, because it's a frequently asked question, is the repair cost. It is paid for by the seller, right? So it's a seller cost, and it is in addition to the reserve. So if there is a repair component, just keep that in mind. It'll be tacked on. You'll see that on the settlement statement, and the seller can expect to see that come out of their proceeds as well. Okay, I want to skin out the numbers and how it works just so we're all extra clear, all right? So here's an example using a $500,000 purchase price. We're using a 6% program fee, 5.5% agent commissions, and resale fee 15% reserve. And in this scenario, there will be strategic repairs of $50,000 done to enhance the resale value of the property, right? Now, here is on screen, you're looking at what the seller could expect for that first payout, about $317,500. Now, of course, this would be less their mortgage if they have any liens, and this would be less any customary closing costs that they may have that they bear as the seller, right? But that's going to give you that high level at a glance of what that first payout is going to look like for that seller. Okay, so really, when the property resells, there's really only one of three scenarios in which this can play out. And so we're going to break down each of those. So the first scenario is the home sells for exactly that offer amount. So you put the home on the market and the home sells for exactly that $500,000 offer amount. And in that scenario, this is the cleanest scenario. It's the easiest example to go through. In that scenario, 100% of the reserve is returned to the seller. And so the seller would get that second payout of the reserve amount, which was $75,000. And that's like how it would skin out. Super simple, super clean. Now, the second scenario in which this could play out is the home sells for less on the open market. Okay, so in this next scenario, the home sells for less. It only sells for $490, and the purchase price was $500. And so in this scenario, that difference between the original purchase price of $500 and what it resold for, which was $490, is $10,000. And so that $10,000 would be backed out of the reserve, and the remaining portion, which is $65,000, is then returned to that homeowner. Okay, are we tracking? Okay, good. So the third and final scenario, and it's going to play out one of these three ways. It's just the only thing that can do. It's all the math can do here. Is the other scenario is the home sells for more on the open market. And so let's say the home sold for $510,000 on the open market. Well, in this scenario, what would happen is not only would all of the seller's reserve of $75,000 be returned to them, but then also that difference between the purchase price and what it sold for, $510,000 in this example, that extra $10,000 is called the upside, and that upside would also then be returned to the seller, and they would get a second payout in this scenario of $85,000. And so I love going through the math on this because it really skins out one of three ways. And it's a really, easy scenario to explain. But when you get the questions, again, the biggest piece of advice is don't shop with someone else's wallet. You don't know what they're willing to do. We can look at this. And in fact, when we first started, and this was back in 2014, when we first started working cash offers at scale, my first gut was, why would a seller ever want to leave money on the table? I could just go sell this house on the open market and they don't have to pay these fees and blah, 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 blah. And I had a paradigm shift. And there was a moment in time, and I can viscerally remember it because I was sitting in a specific conference room and I was roundtabling with my partners. And it just occurred to me that this is something that sellers are willing to do. They're willing to pay for certainty. They're willing to pay for convenience. And there was a paradigm shift. And so you never know what someone is willing to do. It works or it doesn't. And either way, it's okay, because ultimately, if this doesn't work for that listing agent, and if it doesn't work for that homeowner, ultimately, what you've done is you brought an option to the marketplace. You've shown value to the marketplace. And I believe you're going to help them in their efforts because they're going to be able to use that to uncover the seller's motivation, maybe take a strategic price reduction. Who knows? And maybe you'll get a phone call back after a few weeks and that home hasn't sold. And they'll say like, hey, can we revisit those cash offer numbers? In any event, we hope this helps you on your journey. We're just really excited about unlocking options in the marketplace, and we know that we're tooling you up to do so. We went through a lot today. And so kind of as you're thinking on this, marinating on this, if there's anything you need from us and our team to help you on your journey, we're always here for you. Let me check the chat before we wrap up because I do have a few in here. Okay. Jim had another great question. Can you please explain the circumstances under which we may present a cash plus or a cash plus repairs offer to our own listing clients? Yeah, Jim, any of your existing clients, you are welcome to bring the cash plus offers to them. Any of the offerings, really. I just really believe that the cash plus and the cash plus repairs in this market, they're our most widely accepted offers. And so they just tend to work really well for this market of the moment. And if you have a listing and it's on the market, go through the sequence I showed you today as far as going into your platform, clicking that Get Cash Offers button, typing in the address, and then just submit that property, get those cash offers. And another thing that we can do is if you would like one of our team members to accompany you and the seller and explain the offers, that is absolutely something that we can do. We do it all day long. When you get the offer returned, you're going to get an email, and there is a schedule a meeting button in that email. So you can always schedule a meeting with one of our product consultants, and they can, take the time to go through those offers with you, with the seller. This can even happen with the on-market properties. And so if you bring this offer to a listing agent for a property and it's on market and they want to talk through it, you could absolutely do that with them as well. Yeah, Dusty, yes, their payoff. So Dusty said, what about their payoff? Absolutely, on that first sale, whatever that payoff is, it's going to need to get paid off. And so a key component of this is, does that seller have enough equity for this offer structure to work? And, uncovering that can be tricky on that first interaction with the listing agent. But yeah, it would need to cover the payoff, of course. And then, Chuko, I hope I said your name correctly. Let's see. Who is going to pay the buyer's agent commission when it's relisted? That is negotiable. So it's negotiated in the resale. If the buyer offer comes in and they're asking for a buyer's agent commission, and if the offer makes sense, then at that point, it might get accepted. If that gets accepted, then ultimately the seller does pay for that. All right, Lynette, can you go over the commissions again? So yeah, great question. Can you go over commissions again? No, 2 + 2 does not equal 5.5. Totally get it, Lynette. Good catch. It is the resale fee. The resale fee includes the agent commissions. It also includes closing costs on the second sale. And so that is why it is greater than 4%. That's why it's 5.5. Okay, let's see, Dusty. Does the seller get a say in which offer gets accepted after it goes on the market? So in the Cash Plus addendum, there is a provision that gives the seller full control for 2 weeks. After that 2-week time frame, that control does relinquish to the buyer. And so they don't get control over it after that time frame. But I will say that if you read through our resale marketing agreement, in fact, let me see if I can quickly pull one up for us. The buyer has done a very thoughtful job of thinking through this and really thinking through maximizing that resale value. And so what I know is that we believe that they will do better in this environment with this resale marketing plan in place, the buyer is going to negotiate fervently on their behalf. They're not going to just accept some lowball offer. Of course, you as the agent have a lot of say in all of this process. And so you get to advise the buyer on what you believe is the best offer, all of that great stuff. But yeah, they are giving up a little bit of control, right? And the buyer understands that, which is why they've memorialized that with that resale marketing agreement. And in fact, I said I was going to find it and then I abandoned ship. So let me see if I can pull it up real quick. So it's this guy. This resale marketing plan really skins out exactly what's going to happen from your side, the buyer side, how we're going to work together, what we're going to track, what are the metrics that we're looking for. And then it also does skin out, as you'll see at the bottom, the consistent, controlled, strategic approach for taking price reductions and how it is based on showings. It's based on offer activity, showing activity, and what that looks like based on that time frame. And so your input, your property status updates that you give the buyer also help make the decision on whether or not a reduction is needed, and if that reduction is needed, at how much it's needed. Elon, hi, how are you? It's good to have you on today. Could you go over the closing costs on the first payout and the second payout? So closing costs are just going to be typical for your market. So whatever would be typical for your market. I know that a lot of us use like a net sheet calculator. So sometimes it's helpful just to throw it in there, see what those closing costs are going to be. And what we see, of course, there's going to be an outlier if you're in a state with like a stamp tax or if you're in a state with some sort of transfer tax. But in general, we see about 1 to 1.5% is typical, and it goes up from there. Ochuka, you said you still have a few leads that say finalize, but I haven't gotten any instruction on when to take photos of the property. Do I schedule with the seller directly? Yes. Okay, so if you are working seller source leads, I'm guessing, and maybe that lead came in and the offer was finalized and the buyer is waiting for photos, absolutely pick up the phone, call that homeowner, let them know that you're working on getting those cash offers. If you could stop by, it'll take 15, 20 minutes and take some photos. You'll be able to really maximize that offer return and get the highest possible cash offers back for them. That's typically a good foot in the door. And, they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, like that makes sense. And then of course, what we recommend is that when you do that, yes, you're going to go take pictures, but you're also utilizing that opportunity to build rapport, uncover motivation, give a listing consultation. I know you're setting a tight time frame on that 15 to 20 minute expectation, but what I know is that you can use that opportunity to pivot to listing the home on the open market if one of the cash offer options does not work for them, which is, most of the time, right? Like we make no bones about it. The acceptance rate on cash offers is very low. The true opportunity for you is to present that number, and if those numbers don't work, to pivot to the listing. So yes, great questions. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope this gave you some clarity and some tactics to get out there and go get your unfair share of the market. We love that here. So thanks so much, and I will be back with you in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.